So my name is Jaya. I'm married to Pete. We've been married for nearly 16 years. I'm half Irish, half Malaysian, so it's a bit of a combo. And you know, the Irish part of me comes out when the rugby's on. So I don't know if anyone watches rugby, anyone's interested in rugby. Like, I morph into someone else when I'm watching the rugby, except on Friday when they lost again to New Zealand. So Pete is born and raised in Sittingbourne. He was actually born in a house in Sittingbourne. That is how committed he is to Sittingbourne. And by day, so we both work for the church, but Pete is also a firefighter. So Pete is very calm and collected. He never panics about anything, maybe just the nature of what he does for his job, but he's very calm. Except when we're watching our son Josiah play football, and then he does morph into the football dad. And I don't know if there are any other football parents or maybe grandparents where your children play sports or involved in something, and you hear that horrendous sound that comes out of your mouth. Pete and I, we're both like that. We're like, oh, we sound so ridiculous, just be quiet, but you can't help it, can you, when you're watching Saturday morning football. So our son Josiah plays for a local team, and he's settled on Arsenal as his team that he supports. So I don't know if I don't know how you feel about that. And our daughter Naya, she's super creative. You can give Naya a sweet wrapper, and she'll turn it into something beautiful. She's just incredibly creative. So I am passionate about the church, and I make no apologies for that. I love the church. I love that it doesn't matter where you can be in the world. Like I've been to church in Poland, and the whole service has been in Polish, but there's been something so beautiful about just standing and worshipping with people who have all had the revelation of Jesus. I absolutely love the church, and you are a gift to each other. So I want you to turn to a neighbour, and I want you to say to your neighbour, you are a gift. And if you don't know your neighbour's name, find out your neighbour's name. But you are a gift to each other. No, you are. Everyone is a gift to each other. And where else is there like the church? Where else is there like the church where we can come together from all walks of life? Like where we are in the southeast of England, like there are people from all over the world. So my children, have grown up with people from Sittingbourne, but they've also grown up with people from Zimbabwe, and they're growing up with people, from the Dominican Republic. Like I love the church, and there are people who are well into their 80s, and there are babies, but together that there is something so beautiful about the church from every walk of life, from every corner, being able to not only be family together, but also being able to reach communities together. And I want to ask you the question this morning: how do you view the church? Is the church just somewhere that you come to, or do you recognise that you are the church? That us as individuals, we are made up. We make up the church. And it says in Ephesians 2, together we are His house, built on the foundation of the apostles and prophets, and Christ Jesus is the cornerstone Himself. And Corinthians 12 tells us that there is one body, and we are all connected to that one body. I love that, don't you? That we're not just individuals floating around. We're not Net Church over here and Altitude Church over there, but we are one body. We've all had that encounter with Jesus, where Jesus has stepped into our lives and He's changed our lives, and so now together we are part of His body. And we're doing a series at church at the moment called God Is, and we are looking at the names of God, like God is provider, God is healer. And something that we wanted to do to, our language can limit so much, can't it, of God. And so we were like, okay, how else can we demonstrate the fullness of God? And so we asked other ministers in the town, in the local town, so the Anglican minister, the Methodist minister, another Pentecostal church. And we were like, tell us what God is provider means to you. Tell us what God is healer means to you. And there was something so beautiful as every Sunday as we watch these videos and we see these ministers sharing the revelation that they've had, there's something so beautiful about it, because God is on the move, and God is, that we are one body together. Whether we, sit in the Anglican pew, or whether we sit in Altitude Church or Net Church or wherever, that God has revealed himself to us. And I'm passionate. Can you tell that I'm passionate about the church? And you know what? The Isle of Wight, listening to Ben and Emma, like, even understanding the Isle of Wight, even understanding the demographics of the Isle of Wight, this island needs Jesus, right? This island needs you guys. This island needs the body of Christ in order to reach it, in order for the fullness of God to be seen. So I want to celebrate the church this morning. And I want to read from, probably one of the most famous examples, I guess, of the Bible, and it's in Acts 2. And I love the book of Acts. I love the faith that they had. And I want to read from Acts 2, and it's verses 42 to 47. And it says this: They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread, and to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe at the many wonders and signs performed by the apostles. All the believers were together and had everything in common. They sold property and possessions to give to anyone who had need. Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favour of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. I love that passage. I love I think in pictures. Does anyone else think in pictures? Like, I just naturally think in pictures, and I imagine what it must have been like, all of them together. But it sounds kind of idyllic, doesn't it? They're eating together, they're sharing their possessions together, they're reaching their community together, and it sounds kind of bliss, doesn't it? And I think sometimes we can almost dismiss that, maybe in the sense of, but that was their culture and that worked for them, and that's not really how we do things. That's not really the way that we do things in the West, or that's not really the way that we do things in this time and in this age. But I believe, that is they have given us a model. They've given us an example of what the church should look like, of what the church can be. And I really feel that we need to grab hold of the heart of it and not be afraid of it. And it's something that I'm having to, challenge myself on all the time of, okay, Jaya, you need to invite more people round to your home, or you need to be a little bit more generous here, because God has given us this example, this beautiful example of the church. And don't get me wrong, like, it wasn't like this Disney, picture where everyone got on well and they all sang, together. That they had their disagreements, they had their moments, where they didn't understand with each other. But the heart of it is that they were devoted to each other. And that's kind of the word that I have for you guys this morning in Altitude Church, is this word of devotion, of being devoted. They were devoted to the teachings of the disciples. They were devoted to each other. They were devoted to meeting together. They were devoted to sharing communion together. And they were devoted to serving their community together. And the word that is used in the Greek language, which the New Testament was written in, is this word steadfast. They were steadfast. And because of their steadfastness, they saw many come to know Jesus as their Lord and as their Saviour. And I think we battle with this a little bit in the Western world, that sometimes this whole idea of devotion, again, can be a little bit alien to us. I remember, Pete and I both grew up in non-Christian homes. My home was maybe a little bit religious, loosely Catholic. The Irish side of me, it was that loosely Catholic. And I remember when I became a Christian at the age of 13. And I remember my family really finding it bizarre. Like, why are you going to church? You know, why are you giving up your free time? Why are you not hanging out with your friends? Why are you going to youth on a Friday night? Why are you serving? You know, it's not your job to do that. Why are you doing that? And there was just that, it's a weird concept. It can feel a little weird kind of why would you do all of that? But I think it's when we understand the purpose of church, when we understand the roles and the gifts that we are to each other, that's when the devotion comes in. And, you know, like I said, Pete and I have been married for nearly 16 years, and I think marriage is an example, isn't it, of devotion. Like, I'm not shaming my husband, but my husband loves to leave the tea towel on the top. Like, I don't know why he does that. Like, he's really clean, he's really neat, but he always loves to leave the tea towel on the surface, and it drives me bonkers. But I'm devoted to him. And when I'm preaching, in the week before I'm preaching, I am a hot mess. Like I'm stressed and I'm anxious, but he's devoted to me. And because we are devoted to each other, we are able, you know, to walk in everything that God has for us. And the thing about devotion is that there is that longevity to it, isn't there? That when you're married, there is that longevity in your marriage, but there is also the same devotion within the church. You know, that we champion one another, that we bear with one another, that we won't always get everything right, but that's okay because we're human. And one of the things that I often say is that I'm a sheep, and everyone's like, what do you mean you're a sheep? And I'm a sheep, but you're also a sheep, and that means that we all need Jesus because he's the good shepherd. And so I'm going to get things wrong, but you're also going to get things wrong, and you're going to show me grace and I'm going to show you grace, and we're not going to be afraid of that. We're not going to be afraid of each other's weaknesses and failures, but we're also going to lift each other up, that we're going to champion each other, we're going to help disciple each other, because that is the beauty of the church. And 1 Peter 2 talks about Jesus as the living stone, and that we are living stones, that there is a plural there. You know, that we all are individual people with all our different walks, all of our different weaknesses, all of our different strengths, all the things that we feel passionate about, or the things that really grate on us, but we are called together to be with the living stone, regardless of, you know, our individuality. So I guess my first point is this, that we are to be devoted to one another. And I'm going to ask Rachel, she's going to come up shortly in a moment. I'll call you up in a minute, Rachel. You know, so I said to you that Josiah is part of a football team. And a few weeks ago, does anyone else have children in football teams or grandchildren? So whenever you go to a match and we are there, you know, on one side and the other team's parents are on the other side. And so this one particular Saturday, we were at this football match, and the other team, they were horrible. They were absolutely horrible. So these are all 7, 8 and 9-year-olds. And the children were not very kind, and the coaches were not very kind, and there was something within us. For some reason, it must have been God, but for some reason that particular Saturday, it was just the mums that had come for Josiah's team. It was just the mums that were together, and so we were watching this play out. So the kids, like one of our team got tackled and he fell over, and the other team were like, oh, he's such a crybaby. And all the mums, you could just see them, their backs were up. They were like, okay, what is going on? And then Josiah, because I think he's just quite tall for his age, so people assume that he's, that he's older than he is. And so for some reason, sometimes he always seems to be the child that gets tackled the most. And so there was one kid, and I don't have anything against any of these children, they're also children, but he kicked this ball and it completely winded Josiah, and I could hear the parents on the other side going, he's faking it, what a faker. And I'm like, oh, Jesus, you need to help me right now. But do you know what was so brilliant about that match? Was that these 7 and 8-year-olds on Josiah's team, they did not rise to any of that. Like, one of the coaches was like effing and blinding at his own child. And we were like, what on earth is going on? But our team were cheering each other on. Our team, even though all of that stuff was being said over there, they were picking each other up. When someone fell over, they all rushed over and they picked them up. When someone scored a goal, they all celebrated together. And I was like, oh, this is such an incredible thing that these 7 and 8-year-olds understand what it is to be devoted to each other, regardless of what is going on over here, regardless of what is being said about them, regardless of what is being done to them. They are devoted to each other, and they won the match. And all of the mums were like, yes. We were like trying to be really gracious about it. We were like, maybe the mums should always go to the matches. But there's something about when you're together, when you're in unity, when you're devoted to one another, there's a strength there, right? There's a strength. So even when that stuff is happening over here, and even when that's being said over there, because we are together, we are stronger. And God has reminded us, I don't know about you, but I know the pandemic may feel, for many of you may feel like a long time ago. For many of you, you may still be feeling the outworkings of that. But I feel like God reminded us, didn't he, in that season, that we need each other. There was that sense of, I miss community, I miss people. And there is that sense of that when, even though we are individuals, God has called us to be together, to be devoted to one another. And Jesus said in John 13, verse 35, people will know that you are my disciples by the way that you love each other. And in Galatians, Paul says that we are to do good to one another, especially to those within the church. You are a gift to each other. You are connected together. God has brought you together from all corners, from all walks of life. And family works stuff through. I don't know if you've ever seen the redwood tree in California. And when I found this out, it was fascinating. I love this time of year, and we had half term last week, and we went out into the woods, and we just had loads of walks in the woods. And I love trees. They're just incredible. And the redwood tree is the tallest tree in the world, and I think it can grow up to 35 stories high. And they can withstand fires. They can survive droughts. Because they're so tall, they can absorb the moisture from the atmosphere. They can survive floods, they can survive diseases, but they cannot survive on their own. They're not the kind of trees that you will find on their own. They grow in communities, and if you later on Google a redwood tree and Google the roots of a redwood tree, and even though these trees are the tallest trees in the world, actually they don't have the deepest of roots. And the reason they don't have the deepest of roots is because their roots go out to the other redwood trees, and so they support each other and they help each other. Their roots intertwine and they grow close to each other, and even when one tree dies, its roots will still supply nutrients to the other trees, because they are not they're not designed to be on their own. And Rachel, I'm going to ask you to come and just put a drop of paint on you, because I wanted to demonstrate the beauty of devotion. Perfect. You see, when we are connected to each other, there's a transfer, there's a connection there. And Rachel, you are an incredible mum, and I need you to know that you're an incredible mum, that God sees your heart and the sacrifices that you make, and even the tiredness that maybe you feel as a mum, but God sees you, and God has got so much for you. And even like seeing the walk, like support Rachel on that walk. Ladies, get there and be part of this. Just getting to know each other on a deeper level. And when we are connected to each other, that when I go back, thank you, Rachel, when I go back to Kent, I'm going to remember Rachel in my hair and on my t-shirt, that I'm going to remember Rachel, and I'm going to pray for Rachel. Why? Because we are sisters in the Lord, and it doesn't matter whether I'm in Kent and Rachel's here. But when we are one body, there is that devotion. And when I go back to Kent, I'm going to be praying for you guys, and we're going to be telling Net Church about you guys. And I want to encourage you, each and every one of you, that we are called to be devoted to one another. And I want us to challenge each other. Maybe the things that you've always done, maybe what new thing could you do? Who could you invite round to your house for dinner? Or, maybe have a play day, or go out for a walk, or learn how to garden together, or whatever it is that you love to do. But there's that sense of, I am devoted to you. I am devoted to this. You see, not only were the church devoted to one another, but they were devoted to give. It says in that passage in Acts that they sold and they shared everything that they had. That everything they had, they put it in the pot and they shared it, and no one went without anything. And it's important to remember, that they didn't have it easy in the early church. They didn't have a building that they could gather in. They were in the same position as you guys, in the sense of they didn't have their own permanent building. They didn't have the internet. They didn't have the cars. They were heavily persecuted. They had to travel from place to place, or they would meet in homes. And yet, they remained devoted. They remained devoted to giving, and the Bible says that thousands were added to them. And Altitude Church, it may feel like there are pieces that are missing. I remember when Pete and I first started, and we were sharing this story with Ben and Emma, that when Pete and I first started leading church, and our senior pastors had been asked to repurpose the church in Dartford, and they asked us to take care of Sittingbourne. And the moment that they left, people were like, you're not our pastors, and so we're going to leave too. And I remember Pete and I were like, we went back to Warren Keeley, we were like, are you sure we're the right people for this? Because everyone's gone, and people have gone, giving's gone down. Are you sure we're the right people? And I remember, sometimes you can feel like, everything's not in place, and this isn't how it should be. But we kept on going. We kept on giving of our time. We kept on giving of our finances. We kept giving everything that was placed in our hands, and God built the church. And I, feel so strongly for you guys here that God, in your devotion to one another, in your devotion to give, that God is going to bless you. So don't give up. Don't lose heart, even for the things that you feel like, not everything's in place. God is going to bless you. And something that Pete and I decided very early on was that the first thing that would come out of our wage was our standing order. The first thing that we were going to give, before any bills needed paying, that our standing order, that our tithe would come out. And so we made that commitment. And we've never gone without. We've always had everything that we have needed. And I was listening to this incredible guy, and he was sharing, so he owned the #1 restaurant in New York. They have all these polls and ratings and whatever, and he was the #1. His restaurant was the #1 restaurant in New York. And I looked on it on Instagram, I'm like, when they have really tiny portions, I'm like, portions are too small, but it looks good. But he was sharing how they were thinking of ways, how can we make our restaurant the #1 restaurant in the world? And he said that they were, it was just their normal dinner service, and they were, going around the tables and just handing out the meals. And he said, and he overheard this family, and they were foodies, and food in New York is like a famous thing. And so they were like, they were talking about all the different restaurants. They were like, and now we're here at Madison 11, I think the restaurant is, and we're getting to taste some of the best food in the world. And then he said, but one of them said, but do you know what, we never got to try a New York hot dog, like from those carts that you see in the films. We never got to try a New York hot dog. And suddenly he had this idea. And he said he got one of his guys to go out and find one of these hot dog vendors, and they went and bought a hot dog, and he took it to his chef. Now this is a Michelin star restaurant, and he's about to serve up, pig ears. And he said to the chef, please, will you plate this up for me. I want to give it to this family. And so the chef made it look pretty. But then they were able to serve this family this New York hot dog. And when they put the hot dog down, they were like in awe of, I can't believe you've just done that for us. Like, this is a Michelin star restaurant and you've brought this really poor quality food into your restaurant, but you've done it because you understood something of the importance of that to us. And then he said there was another family and they had come over to New York. I think it was from Spain. And suddenly they looked out the window and it had started snowing in New York, and they turned to each other and like, it's snowing, we've never seen snow before. And so this guy, he went and got another one of his team, and the team, he said, I want you to go and find a shop, and I want you to find a sledge, and I want you to find gloves. And so at the end of the meal, they said, we've got one more treat for you. Seeing as you've never seen snow before, we've got a driver. They had a driver outside, and they took this family to Central Park, and they went and sledged for the first time in their life. You see, church, there's something so powerful when we give, and within each and every one of us, there is the endless opportunities of ways that we can give to one another, but not only to one another, but to those in our community. Like, we had the parents that are on the football team, like, they're the people that we're trying to reach, and one of the mums was like, do you have a printer? She just messaged me, and I said to Pete, maybe I just need to buy her a printer. Like, I know that sounds a bit, why would you, that's a bit odd in this day and age, but we are called for more, right? We are called to show the fullness, like Jesus went to the cross. Jesus gave everything. We've had communion this morning where we remembered that Jesus gave his life up on the cross. And I want us to be the kind of people that are not afraid to give. I'm not afraid to build relations. Like the parents on the football team, they swear their heads off, and they sometimes turn up a little bit intoxicated. But Jesus has put them in my world, and so I'm going to reach them, and I'm going to give, and I'm going to do everything that I can to demonstrate the love of God to them. You see, devotion is to each other. Devotion is that we give, and devotion is that we see. And I know it might sound a bit silly, but we have our eyes, right? And our eyes are how we see. They force us to look outwards. Our eyes don't show us what's inside our body. Our eyes show us who is around us. And I want to ask you the question this morning. Who do you see? What do you see? In my world, my dad is not Christian. My dad is from Ireland, and you may know many stories historically of Ireland where I guess people were mistreated by those who represented God, and so my dad was physically hurt by people who were ministers, and so his view of God has always been that of God is a God. How can God be loving when I was beaten by the priest, or I was beaten by the monk, or whatever? And I want to ask you the question, who do you see? So I see the parents of the football team, and I see the cleaner at church who often comes in, and she often just needs a safe place to talk. She often just needs someone to encourage her and build her up. And you've got incredible opportunities coming up with the hamper appeal, and I love the heart of, let's not just do what they need, let's just do more. Let's do more than that. Who do you see? That you've got the Christmas service coming up, that you're going to have people coming through your doors. Will you see them? Will we make that choice, each and every one of us, of God, may I always have eyes to see? Something that we've tried to teach our children, and by no means we're not perfect by any means at all, but something that we've taught them is that, if we see someone who's homeless, that we will stop, that we will acknowledge them, that we will give them some food to eat. And I remember one time that it was after school, and Josiah and I, we pulled up into Aldi's, and he'd clocked this homeless man, and he wasn't even sat by the shop entrance. If anything, he was right in the corner of the car park. And Josiah said, "Mum, there's a homeless man over there. And he was like, Mum, we need to go and give him something. And he got some of the food that we just bought from the shop, and he ran over by himself and he went and spoke to this man. And I share that story with you because, God, may we always see people. And I know that there are times when I choose to look away. And I know that, oh, Holy Spirit, I need you to help me to never look away, but to always see the people that you place around me. And we don't need to be perfect. And we don't need to know the Bible inside out. And we will have our good days and our great days. We will always make mistakes because we're always sheep in need of Jesus. But that doesn't mean that we need to stop ourselves from being able to see people, and not only see people but love on people, and not only love on people but give ourselves to in order to demonstrate the love of God. Who you are is needed. The person that you are is needed in this church, in this community, in your family, in your workplaces. God has placed you exactly where you are. Do not be afraid.
Thank you so much for being part of Altitude Church online today. We would love it if you would consider becoming part of the Altitude family. Email us on hello@altitudechurch.com or contact us via our social media. There are loads of ways that you can give to help us further the amazing work of Altitude Church on the Isle of Wight. It would make a huge difference to us if you would join us with generosity as we work together to tell more and more people about Jesus and make an impact on this amazing island.